from the year 1951 on Parshas Shkalim. Okay, which this week we learn, we take out three Torahs, and this is going to be the Torah that's connected to the time of year that we read from the four Parshas Shkalim. So that year it wasn't Parshas Truma like this year, it was Parshas Vayakel. But Shkalim is always the same. Okay. Just make sure the YouTube is working here. Okay. The Rebbe says like this: Shabbos Parshas Shkalim, Shabbos Parshas Vayakel, Parshas Shkalim, Mevarchim Adar Sheni. That year was 2 Adars, so it was Vayakel Mevarchim of the month of Adar. When you get to Parshas Shkalim, when it comes with regard to Parshas Shkalim, hey Aaron, we're just starting. When you get to Parshas Shkalim, when it comes to the Shkalim, Matzinu Medrash Temur, we find what the Rebbe calls a wondrous. Sharna, we find a wondrous medrash. We've learned to Sicho before, but this is a very powerful talk of the Rebbe, the first year the Rebbe accepted leadership in Parshas Shkalim. So the Rebbe says, Matzinu Medrash Temur, we find a wondrous medrash. The Rebbe calls it in Yiddish, a modner medrash, a strange medrash. It says like this. It says, Parshas Shkalim Amar Moshe Lefnei Kadosh Baruch Hu. When it came to Shkalim, Moshe Rabbeinu said to Hashem, Ribono Shel Olam. He said, God, Mishani Meis, when I pass away, Moshe was talking about himself. Ein ani niskar, I won't be remembered. After 120, Moshe passed away at 120 years old, I won't be remembered. So Amalek, here we're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu, who gave the Torah, Har Sinai, right? So he says, I won't be remembered. So Amalek Kadosh Baruch Hu, God says to Moshe in reply, Chayecha, it's an expression of like I promise. Just like now, you're giving them the mitzvah of saying Shkalim, of giving the half coins to the dedication of the building of the tabernacle. And you're counting all the Jewish people by counting the half coins. Every year. When the Jewish people come and read Parshas Shkalim, every year we read the Shkalim in the Chumash, the first, either the Rosh Chodesh Adar or the Shabbos Mevarchim Adar, because in the beginning, when did they start collecting the half coins before in temple times was from Rosh Chodesh Adar. So therefore we start reading about the half coins around Rosh Chodesh Adar. So God responded to Moshe every year when they read out in the Torah about Parshas Shkalim. So it's going to be as if you're standing there counting them and elevating them. Minayin, what's the proof to this medrash, to this whole conversation, and to God's reply? Imashakaru be'inyan. So it says, "Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemer kisisas roish." God says to Moshe, "When you will count." Doesn't say sa'as roish, go and count, which would be present. He talks futuristic, when you will count. Lo namer ele kisisa, when you will count. What does it mean? When you will count? Not now. Every year, when the Jewish people, are giving shkalim. So it's going to be Moshe's counting the Jewish people. So the Rebbe calls it a modern medrash, obviously, for many reasons, because Moshe Rabbeinu is going to be remembered for many things. This is where Moshe is attaching his confusion. How are they going to remember me about Parshas Shkalim? So the Rebbe is going to analyze this medrash. The Rebbe first breaks down the response. Since the pasuk, the pasuk doesn't say that God tells Moshe, count the Jewish people as in present, b'lashon tzivui, as a command, ela sisa esreish b'lashon asid, in a future sense. That means God is hinting to Moshe. Of course, he had to count the Jewish people then as well. He counted the coins. But God was also hinting that he's going to continue to count the coins. He's going to continue to count and elevate the Jewish people. Every year, when the Jewish people read the Shkalim. And this happened through Moshe. This happens through Moshe, and the extension, which the Zohar teaches us, the leader of every generation, is called the Ispashtusa, the extension of Moshe of every generation. The Rebbe says, he asks the question, Ma'u hatam, what's the reason? Why did Moshe get concerned when it came to God? God told him 613 laws. All the Torah, all the mitzvahs God gives Moshe. Why is Moshe concerned when it comes to Shkalim? What's going to be how am I going to be remembered? He was confused about the future of the Jewish people and his relationship to them and his need. We're going to see it's not that he's scared about that if they remember him or not. It's Moshe's concern for the Jewish people. Why is he concerned when it comes to Shkalim specifically? What's going to be in the future year, in the future generations? Mishani Meis, when I pass away. We don't find in any previous parsha, meaning section of the Torah that deals with certain laws, that Moshe was concerned what's going to be in the future. The Rebbe says like this: you will understand this. In order to understand Moshe's concern specifically when it comes to the counting of the half coin, we have to understand what is the mitzvah of the half coin. It says, "V'nasnu ish kofer nafshe." A person has to give a kapara, an atonement to his soul. Zeh yitnu. This is what you have to give. So when a person comes to an atonement, God says, how do you find atonement? You have to give the coin. Machzeh shekel, the half coin. Ha'asher lo yarbe, the rich person can't give more. V'hadal lo yamid. Welcome back, Rebbe Shimon. And the poor person can't give less. It's not something that goes. There were other sacrifices that were dependent on how strong your finances were. If you were wealthy, you had to give a larger sacrifice, and if you were unfortunately less wealthy, you gave a lesser of a sacrifice, all the way down to giving a carbon mincha. But over here, there's no everyone has to give equal. So al pasuk zayitnu amar Chazal, we have another idea that the rabbis teach us when it comes to zayitnu. God has said this is what you should give. What's it mean? This is as if God is showing him something. The Chazal teach us that God took out a coin of fire and showed it to Moshe. This is what you have to give. This is what you have to give what the Jewish people have to give for a kapara. Why did God have to show Moshe a coin of fire? Again, there's many mitzvahs. We don't find this. We find this idea only in a few places. We find it in the menorah, and we understand why he had a problem with the menorah. So, what was the problem? What was the challenge here? That God had to show him a coin of fire. Hold on, Aaron. There's mevor b'Tosfos. The Tosfos explains. Tosfos commentary in the Talmud. Shetama Moshe al adavar ma yechel adam litakei f'nafshay. Because what Moshe was bothered was he didn't understand the concept. How do you get an atonement? What's the idea that you give something to achieve atonement? How does giving something have anything to do with atonement, which is about a sin that you've done? Yes, Aaron. If you're talking, we don't hear you. Aaron, you're trying to ask something?
Wait, hold on one more second. Okay, what's a coin of fire?
A coin of fire, literally a coin of fire. He showed him. We'll see in a second what it represents, but he showed him from heaven. This is a coin of fire. Let's see what the Gemara asked the question. So it said that Moshe Zayinu, God showed him, but in the literal sense, it's a coin of fire. But what's the message behind the coin of fire? We're gonna see in a second. So Moshe's question was, how could you find kapara? So God showed him a coin of fire. So Tosfos says that he showed him a coin of fire because he didn't understand that concept of atonement. So here the Rebbe asked the question, like Aaron just asked. Seemingly doesn't make sense. How was Moshe's concern answered or addressed? What does it mean a person could give atonement? That God showed him a coin of fire. What's a coin of fire have to do with the question of atonement? So Ha'inin, who the idea is, by God showing Moshe a coin of fire, what God was really showing him, because Moshe's question was, how do you achieve atonement? How does a person through avoda, through our service, atone for sins that we've done or our past? So God shows Moshe that when a person gives a machzah shekel, this is what you have to give. That is the coin of fire. The coin of fire that you see the coin of fire the way I'm showing it to you. When you see what's seemingly just a coin from a person, you should know that coin that the person is giving you, that coin is a coin of fire. Because the person is so excited at the opportunity to be able to find atonement and all the effort the person, he or she, put into getting that coin, working hard, etc. And when that is a coin of fire, God's saying, you look at it as a coin, it's not a coin. That represents something. That coin is a representation of the passion and the fire that's within the soul of the Jewish person. The etzem and nefesh of the essence of the soul. And that's what God was answering Moshe. Therefore, it can achieve an atonement. It's not the coin itself; it's what's behind the coin, the effort to achieve the coin, the opportunity to use the coin to reconnect to Hashem. That passion, that's what God's showing him. You may not see the fire, but in that coin is fire. There's passion of the person. What's the person really giving? The essence of their soul. Not just the outer expressive parts of the soul, which are the three levels of nefesh, ruach, neshama. The essence of the soul. That when a person's trying to achieve atonement, kapara, you should know this is a matbei shalish. This is a passion that reaches all the way. It's an expression of the essence of the soul, and therefore it can achieve atonement. Now we'll understand why, when it comes to the half shekel, the wealthier person can't give more. Right? I'm going to give more money, maybe achieve a stronger atonement, a faster atonement, and the poor person can't give less. Why? So the Rebbe explains that the idea of poor and rich is not the way it's simply understood. That a person who's rich in the bank, therefore that person has an opportunity to give a larger amount of money. Seemingly, the Rebbe says doesn't make sense. We must be talking about not that someone who's rich in something else, in money. We're talking about rich in the issue at hand, trying to achieve a kapara, trying to reconnect to God. If we're talking about that the person happens to be wealthy in something else, meaning money, or whatever else the person's wealthy in even mitzvos, or wealthy in dedication, that's not the wealthy is about what we're talking about in the subject of finding a kapara. How wealthy are you, and how and what are we talking about? But the fact that you just have money, a side way of upping your game, that's not what we're talking about over here. So if we're talking about a person who's rich when it comes to Torah mitzvahs, when it comes to trying to achieve atonement, so why shouldn't the person who's wealthy be able to give more of their efforts, and someone who has less to give should be able to give less of their efforts? So the answer is when we talk about someone who's wealthy or poor, that's only the expressive parts of the soul. That the person has more Torah, more chachma, more wisdom, more love for God. But that's all an expression of the soul. When it comes to the essence of the soul, which is the representation of the essence from the word yachid, the oneness of the soul. There's no such thing as a poor person and a rich person when it comes to the essence. Every Jew has the same essence of the soul that can connect to Hashem. L'dal in pachas, a poor person in Torah mitzvahs doesn't have less essence of the soul. Well, Asher, even the most rich person in Torah mitzvahs, I'm not talking about money, in Torah mitzvahs, and Yosher doesn't have more than the essence of the soul. Kamei begashmis, like it says, like we have in a physical sense. Shachilik de gibur v'cholash. When we talk about a person who's a strong person physically, or a person's weak, right? It's hu ba'koyches haglim. That's all in the expressive strengths. I could lift more, I could do more, I could run faster, all that. But the question, if you're alive or not, you can't say the stronger person is more alive than the weaker person. Either you're alive or you're not alive. Even the weak person is alive. Even the stronger person, you're not more alive. You have more strength in being alive. You lift more weights, you could run faster. But you alive or not alive is either yes or no. That's because that's a question of etzem, of essence. When it comes to achieving atonement, you don't achieve atonement with expressive parts of the soul. It's not talking about the nefesh, ruach, and neshama. When it comes to atonement, you have to reach all the way to the essence, and in the essence, everyone's equal. It's not possible for the wealthy person, so to say, the wealthy person in Torah, to give more of the essence, or the poor person to have to give less of the essence. Essence is essence. Everyone has to give the same amount. Now we understand, now that we understand what Shkolim is, it's not just the idea of giving a half coin. It's the idea of achieving atonement. It's the idea of awakening the essence of your soul, the Yechida Shebenefesh, to connect your Yechida with the Yachid, your oneness to the oneness of God. This is why Moshe is concerned. That takes a great effort to awaken the essence of the soul. Now we understand why Moshe feels concerned when it comes to Shkolim. How does a person give the coin of fire, take the essence of the soul and reconnect that to Hashem, koifer nafshe, to achieve atonement. You need the effective Moshe. You need Moshe to help the person. That's what Moshe's job is. Moshe's job is a tzavsa v'chibur. Is to connect the person to Hashem, to help the person bring out their essence. Moshe lifts up the heads of the Jewish people so they should be able to reach into their essence and give it a coin of fire. It's only Moshe. That's the job of Moshe, to awaken the essence of the soul of the Jewish person. Like we learned in Parshas Mishpatim, ki sikne avad ivri. Those learned at the Torah or Parsha. Moshe awakens he reveals the essence of the Jewish person that's there, which has to be revealed, and that's a Moshe's concern. When it comes to Shkolim, that demands a person to give a coin of fire, to reveal and to connect the essence of the soul, to achieve atonement. This is where Moshe is concerned. This is where he asks Hashem, what's going to be when I'm no longer here to help the Jewish people? I'm no longer here to awaken the essence of the soul of the Jewish person. How are they going to reconnect? How are they going to find kapara? How are they going to find atonement? In order for a person to give atonement, to reveal the essence of the soul, the level that's either you're alive or not alive, no, not the level of expression. That you need Moshe for. So therefore Moshe doesn't know what's going to be. So God responds to Moshe that I didn't say kisisa that you should do it only now in the present. So it's Reish Loi Nemar. Kisisa Lashon said we're talking futuristic. Just like now, 3,000 plus years ago, you stood there and you gave the Jewish people the laws of the half shekel, and were revealed within them the essence of the soul, which was required after the sin of the golden calf. Va'ata zoikif esroshin, and you're lifting up the heads of the Jewish people to achieve this atonement that they needed to achieve by building the Mishkan. Kach b'chol shana, so too every year. Shana v'shana shekar noisei lefanei, when the Jewish people stand in shul on Parshas Shkolim and they read Shkolim. Kilo ata oimet sham, is as if you're standing in every single synagogue amongst all the Jewish people. Ba'isa shav zoikif esroshin, you're helping them. That when they read the Parshas Shkolim, that the person should reach within and find that the coin of fire within them. When the Jewish people read the Parshas Shkolim every year, with a renewed passion and fire, like the Torah has to be every day fresh. Then you get elevation, and that happens through Moshe, through the extension, the Nasi, the Rebbe of every generation, the Moshe Shebedar, that awakens the essence of the soul. After that, the Rebbe said the Maimer Kisisa Sreish B'nai Yisrael, a very powerful Maimer. After this, the Rebbe explains like this. In the Maimer, the Rebbe talks about the uniqueness of the Jewish people, and what Moshe has to awaken is the belief in Hashem, in the essence of God. There's the belief in the way Hashem runs the world. There's the belief in God, the way He is outside, so to say, Soiv Kalam is outside the world, a higher power than let's say the level of miracles that's higher than nature. And then there's the essence of God that's beyond the world. The Jewish people have a connection with the essence of God. That's what the Rebbe discusses in the Maimer. So here the Rebbe continues on that idea in the Sicho. After, by the way, that Maimer is one of the very few Maimarim discourses of the Rebbe that we have actually Ksav Yad, a handwriting of the Rebbe preparing the Maimer. So the Rebbe says like this: the Maimer Parshas Sisa, in the Maimarim of Kisisa throughout the generations, meaning of the Rebbeim of Chabad, that was said by the Rebbes. Admar Azakin, the Alter Rebbe said a Maimer on Kisisa. Admar Amtsoi, the Mittler Rebbe, the second Rebbe Dovber, the Rebbe the Tzemach Tzedek, the Rebbe Marash, Rebbe Shmuel, the Rebbe Rashab, Shalom Dovber, the Rebbe V'Kvaik Tishmar Chami Adar, my father-in-law, the previous Rebbe. Muvarim Oisin Yonim, they all talk about the same thing. Shinisbar B'Maimer, that the Rebbe just said himself. That what is thy theme? What's Moshe's job? Shiraya, that he's a shepherd, umefarnes, and he sustains as Samunah de Bnei Yisrael, the belief of the Jewish people. That's what it means really to give the coin of fire, is to awaken the deep Amunah belief a Jewish person has in God. That a Jewish person's belief in God is not the way God runs the world. That Pari also understood. Hari said, I don't know Yudke Vavke, I don't know Havaya. I know Elikim, I know the way the world runs. You tell me about a level of godliness that's beyond the world, I don't recognize that. The Rebbe says in the Maimer, in continuation, what it says in the Maimer, the difference between the belief the Jewish people have in God and the belief that the nations have in God. Okay, this is something we learned in Gemara Sanhedrin many months ago, maybe even a few years ago, in the beginning, about is the question: do the Gentiles have an obligation of not believing in the concept of shituf? Shituf means from the word shutuf. I mean combined efforts. Christianity would fall under the rules of shituf. There's God and another power. So do nations in the seven Noahide laws, do they have to believe in a single God, or do they or it's not a prohibition for them to believe in the concept of shituf? So there's a machlokes, there's a disagreement in the Rishonim. There's the famous Rabbeinu Tam. We learned about it when it comes to doing business with the Gentile. So he says like this: what's the reason that the nations of the world were created from the speech of God? Speech has times that you speak and you don't speak. Speech is a disconnected relationship. When I'm talking, there's communication. When I'm not talking, there's no communication. The relationship is on pause, so to say. Therefore, because their creation comes from speech, and speech is not constant, so therefore there's a space for them to believe that there's another entity, because they don't have the constant flow of godliness, because they come from God's speech. This is a concept in Chassidus and Kabbalah. So the Rebbe says, Yesh lahaisif, we could add, that there's a mimer from the previous rabbis that he quotes his father, the Rebbe, the Rishab. That this idea that the nations are created from speech, and therefore it's not such a prohibition for them to believe in an outside power from God, is also applies to the angels. Because the angels also come from speech. God uttered and they came into existence. The Rebbe says, the Rebbe laughed while he was talking, and he says, he doesn't say that the angels also have an idea that there's shituf, that there's an outside power from God. I mean, what does it mean there's outside power of God? It's not that there exists an outside power, but is it a prohibition for them to believe in that power? So of some sort of joint effort. The word shituf means a joint effort. The Rebbe says, how can we say that the angels, even if they're created by speech, that they have any kind of connection to the concept of a joint power? The Rebbe says, when I learned the discourse, I thought about it, and it came to me an idea. The Gemara asks a question: why were the angels created on the second day? Why weren't they created on the first day? They were created by God's speech on the second day. Other people say they are created on the fifth day, but they're definitely not created on the first day. So Amr Chazal, rabbis have taught us in the Bereishis Rabbah in the Medrash, nothing was created on the first day. Why? If the angels been created on the first day, so Shalai Timer, people shouldn't say that Michal hayamutach b'draymai shal rakia veGavriel b'tzvayne veKadosh Baruch Hu Masada b'mtziusay. Had the angels been there from the beginning, from the first utterance of creation, people may have thought that the angel Michal was to the God's south and Gavriel was to God's north. That's the way it works, by the way. The south is Chesed, north is Gvura. God was in middle, Tiferes, and between the three of them, so to say, that's called Shituf, they created the world. So therefore, God didn't create anything on the first day, because the angels only came the second day. Noichim is not that it would have been that way, but people may have thought that there's such a concept. Everything that comes is only from God. God saying, do you think there was any partner with me in creation? There's no partner. There's no entity that helps God in creation. The idea of shituf is even a joint effort. Doesn't mean that there's another God. But there's a kind of a helper, like the Mechal is helping God. There's not a lot to create. There's a lot of details to monitor, right? The angels are watching. And we learned about these kind of questions of Ayin Mishaitit is the eyes that scan that scan creation. So the Rebbe says, "Veish leimer shemizeh gufish sheberiyas hamalachim yem rishon ha'isa yoichel ligrum k'sak daitav shashitav chas v'sham." Not that the angels themselves would think that they're helping God, but the very fact that their creation on the first day could have caused others to think that there's an outside power of, so to say, a joint effort helping God in His creation. Muchach sheyesh lemalachim eizishi shaychas dinashitav. This is the rule in Torah, by the way. It doesn't. We learned it actually a few weeks ago in the Gemara Sanhedrin, that a person being involved in a story, even if it's not by choice, has nothing to do. You have some sort of level of responsibility. We learned that by King David, even though he was being pursued by Saul, he didn't do anything wrong. But because him being pursued by Saul caused that Saul killed the entire city of Nov, God said you have to pay for it. You have to atone for that, even though he didn't do anything. It wasn't his fault. But you were involved. You're part of the story. So had the angels been part of the story of misleading people, that there's a concept of shituf, therefore there's a concept of so to say, they have a connection to the story, even though it wasn't by choice. If they had no connection to the concept, their creation wouldn't have been able to lead anyone astray to believe there's a concept of a joint effort in creation. The Rebbe says, so the Rebbe says, so how could it be that if they had been created, they would have led people to believe that there's a joint power creating the world? So the Rebbe explains, anything that's created by speech, because speech is right? You don't have to always talk. The difference between speech and thought. Thought is constant. Speech is sometimes sometimes you have to be quiet. So that disconnect is kind of disconnect of the flow of the oneness of God in the perception of creations that were created by speech. Because the Jewish people were created by thought, alu b'machshava, therefore the Rebbe says in the Maimer that the Jewish people they have a prohibition, they're not allowed to believe in shituf, it's prohibited. And not only that, therefore they also have an ability to have a munah, to believe in God on a much higher level, because they're connected to the thought of God versus the speech of God. That's one of the ideas of the Maimer. But now the Rebbe is going to go into an avoida part. Avoida means is how in the part of the Maimer that explains how we're supposed to apply our emunah, our belief in God, in our practical lives. The Rebbe continues. We spoke in the Maimer. What's Moshe? Moshe provides belief. He sustains us with the belief. So the question is, why do we need Moshe for belief? If we're believers, we believe. What's Moshe adding to our belief? Well, the problem is, on our own, our belief in God would be in the way of makif. What's makif mean? External. And the Rebbe is going to show us, what does it mean? How do we understand that emunah, I believe in God, and it's not, I haven't internalized it. It's an external belief. Therefore, the Gemara says, and we've learned this idea many times, that the thief, before he goes to rob, calls out to God. Why do you call out to God before you go out to rob? And you're not saying, God, don't look. You're saying to God, help me rob. How is that contradiction not a contradiction? Because your belief in God is makif. How do you internalize that belief in God? So the contradictions of life, and the Rebbe says in the mind, we're not just talking about the extreme contradiction of a person about to walk into a store. We're talking about any time there's an inconsistency in your belief in God. If you really believed in God, you wouldn't have these contradictions in your life. So how do you have these contradictions? It's because your belief in God is makif, is external. You haven't internalized it. Moshe internalizes it, so therefore these contradictions go away. The Rebbe says this idea of the inconsistencies, the contradictions of believing in God, and then at the same time we don't behave on that belief. Each person can find in themselves. You don't have to be standing outside a store calling out to God to help you rob. The Rebbe gives an example. When you have a business person, in the beginning, everything was going well. They made good money and they gave charity like they should on their income. And then they went through some sort of test. When the business isn't going so great, as like the Rebbe says in Yiddish, as is epes nitazoi. Things aren't going as great as rosy as they were. Things are kind of you feel you have to tighten your belt. So what do they start thinking? Tachbula, it's all kind of things, right? Why did I give so much tzedakah? Had I not give the tzedakah, I would have more savings. I shouldn't give many more tzedakah because of giving tzedakah isn't going to affect my savings. And they totally forget that the whole reason they had the income in the first place was because of the charity. The charity is the source of the income. And that's the contradiction. It means you believe in God. meaning to say that God exists, but at the same time, you're thinking that if I do the mitzvah of God, it's going to hurt my income. That's a contradiction. The Rebbe says we can understand when it says in the Maimer that the Maimer starts off that my left hand, the left hand of God, so to say, is under my head. And the right hand hugs me. It means that there's a kind of a balance of the left discipline and the right hugging, giving support. And there's a Maimer that explains this in Torah or Parshas Kisisa. Means the connected Kisisa is the laws of Shkolim. So this idea comes in this idea the Rebbe teaches in Parshas Kisisa, and we're going to see in a second. So here the Rebbe says a side note: Shesham Chaser Hemshech Yanim. There's some words missing in the Maimer. Why would there be words missing in the Maimer of Torah are? So we've learned this before. The previous Rebbe tells that because when the Alter Rebbe would tell Torah, would say Chassidus, he'd get so connected to the ideas and to godliness. When he said Divrei Elikim Chayim, he would start rolling from excitement and from an aloofness. He would start rolling on the floor as he was saying in the Maimer. He would roll. On the floor, he didn't stop saying the Maimer. He would roll as he was saying the Maimer. So we know that we needed someone to, though it was Shabbos, right? So how did they record what the Rebbe was saying? So the Rebbe had a chayzer. Every Rebbe had a chayzer. A chayzer means the person who would take down everything the Rebbe said, and after Shabbos, write it down. So a chayzer Rashi, the main chayzer means to repeat, was Reb Pinchas Rises, the famous chassid, Reb Pinchas Rises. So what would he do? He would roll after the Alter Rebbe, so he could listen to the Alter Rebbe as the Alter Rebbe is rolling. So here's the Rebbe rolling, and the chayzer is rolling after him to listen. He could have walked, but that's another question. So he could hear every word. But in this Maimer, we're missing some words. So the Friedrich Rebbe says, either a Pinchas wasn't there, so he wasn't rolling with the Alter Rebbe. It wasn't always easy to roll after the Alter Rebbe. Therefore, we're missing some ideas. But what's the Alter Rebbe saying in this Maimer? So here he talks about the concept of the lack of amunah, the contradictions in our life when it comes to sometimes we see God disciplining us and we misunderstand it for discipline instead of really love. Shederach Hashem livnei Yisrael. The Alter Rebbe says like this. How does it work with Hashem and the Jewish people? Am Karoivoi, his close people, his close nation. Sometimes there's a voice above that awakens the emotion, the midah of the left side that has to push away to discipline. Why? And we deserve it. We've done things to awaken these voices, so to say. You have to know that to yourself is a salvation. So this dot is missing some words. So the Rebbe explains. Is a small doicha. The Alter Rebbe says when God is pushing, sometimes when you look at it as discipline, God is never pushing a person totally out of the room. It's really an expression of the right hand bringing closer. Meaning to say, there's two ways to look at the idea small doichi minit chapkeni, right? We have the famous Gemara. There's certain people that the rabbis pushed with two hands. Shtei yadayim. Tanya says the only thing you push away with two hands is the Eitz Sahara. Otherwise, you never push anyone away with two hands. One hand is discipline, the other hand is support. But most a way we understand it is that the left hand is discipline, but at the same time, the right hand is the support. The Alter Rebbe is explaining that the left hand itself, what you think is discipline, is itself a support. That itself is the right hand hugging you. The Rebbe says it doesn't seem to make sense. Why would a person ever think that when Hashem is disciplining, is hugging you, that it's discipline? If someone's hugging you, you feel the love. Why would you feel discipline in the hug? So we can understand it based on the Maimer. That what? It depends how you look at the hug. Sometimes the hug is a hug that you don't know, it's misunderstood as a discipline. When sometimes a person feels that he's lacking or she's lacking in hatzlacha and success in their efforts of life, in business or other things. It could be in relationships, it could be in Torah study, right? You're feeling that you don't have hatzlacha in trying to do in accomplishing things. That God is pushing you away. Why am I not being matzliach? Why am I not being successful? That's God showing me he has no interest in me. Small deicha. But you have to know that the truth is but you understand, you're misunderstanding the message. It's a hug, it's love. What's the idea? What's the idea of this hug? So the Rebbe says, Isa b'medrash. The medrash says, Yaakov Esav me'iman. When Yaakov and Esav were in their mother's stomach, right? We all know that they didn't get. They spent those 9 months arguing it out, and that argument's gone for thousands of years. Rivka had to go to Shem to ask what's going on. Who has children like this? So Yaakov Esav me'iman. Yaakov and Esav were in their mother's stomach. Yaakov said to Esav, Achi, my brother, there's 2 worlds in front of us. There's this world and the world to come. I'll make a deal with you. You take this world. That's why in Rome, when the rabbis heard about the noise of the celebration of Rome that represents Esav, they cried, our Rabbi Kiva laughed, because it's this conversation. You take the world, this world. I'll take the world to come. Yaakov said, I'll take the spiritual, you can take all the material blessings. And they made the deal. So Yaakov took the world to come, and Esav took this physical world. And now Yaakov is coming to meet Esav. 80 so years later, 100 years later, when he's coming from Lavan's house, and he sends him all these gifts. Right? It means he had all this money, he had all these gifts, all these animals and servants, etc. And Esav sees the material success of Yaakov. So he tells Yaakov, Achi, my brother, did we not have a deal? Where do you have all this money from? We had a deal. You're going to be sitting as a schlepper learning in the yeshiva all day. I'm going to be the wealthy one. I'm ready to give up my world to come, but we had a deal. Where do you have all this money from? We had made a deal. So the Rebbe says, so Esav has a good question. So then why does God give Gashmius, material blessings to Yaakov? They made a deal that all the material goes to Esav. So the answer is because that's part of Yaakov's Olam Haba. How does Yaakov really bring godliness down to the world, really earn his Olam Haba by able to use his material and make it spiritual? It's there's 2 ways one could do that. Either I want to be able to learn a whole day. I want to be able to have focus. I don't want to have stress and anxiety. So God says part of my olam haba is in order for me to excel in spiritual, I need to have a cushion in the material. So it's all part of the spiritual. Or not that it should support my anxieties and efforts and my nerve system, but I should actually take the monies and give it to charity, give it to holy things, build a shul. I didn't see this as tzedakah. So therefore, if a person really believes, that's the Amunah part, that's what Moshe reveals. Why does God give a Jew success in their business? You're not Esav. There's no reason in the success itself. This is all about how you're going to use it as a cushion or support for your spiritual needs. If a person sees that there's a holdup in the flow of the physical blessing, then you know for sure what's the solution. Because the only reason I get Gashmias material is to be able to use it for Ruchnis, for holiness. So what do? I double down on the spirituality. I don't hold it up. I don't say I'm going to learn less. Well, I can't learn. I wanted to learn, but I can't because it's an effect of my business. I wanted to give tzedakah. I can't. It's an effect of my income. Don't try to make all kind of schemes or kind of ideas in your head. Your whole source of parnasa, the only schus you have to have Gashmis is because of Ruchnis. You made a deal with Esav. If you don't like the deal, you could call foul on Yaakov. But that's the way it is. But in since it's tzedakah, give more tzedakah, double down. Like the Alter Rebbe says, the Alter Rebbe says that if a person sees that there's a hold up in the business, in the finances, it's not God being angry at you and pushing you out. Small doicha, the left hand that pushes. There is no pushing away. It's not even a temporary discipline. It's in a way of God showing you. Get focused on your spirituality because that's your source of everything. That's coming from the right side. And you have to have a munah for that. It means godliness and Yiddishkeit has to be real to you. This deal that Yaakov made with Esav has to be real to you. You actually believe and act on that deal, not that you say it's some sort of medrash you read about and shake your head. Yemim Mekarevis, this is God waking you up and saying, this is your reality. Yeminit Chabkeni, this is me hugging you. It's waking you up, giving you a shake. Recognize your Gashmis is all about Ruchnius. Your physical is all about spiritual. This itself is a salvation for you. By waking up, getting this little shuckle, little splash of cold water. This is a way of awakening that you should double down in your Torah, double down in your service in Hashem, double down in your Nesinas HaTzedakah. And then when you have that flow, when your source of your flow, your source of your spring is your Torah mitzvahs, so then of course everything is going to flow. Now the Rebbe says, just like now we've been focusing on mizainis, on parnasa, on income. This doesn't only apply to income, it applies to all things physical. When it comes to a person's health, if a person suffering from a health issue, health is also the same idea. A healthy Jew, Esav has a problem, right? We see the world doesn't like strong Jews. So Esav, a healthy Jew, but Yaakov walks healthy with 11 sons and a daughter, and all whatever his servants, a healthy, strong Jew, that Esav doesn't subscribe to that. So when it comes to Chaim, when it comes to health, if a person has a problem in their health, the same thing, you have to know what's your solution. Your solution is in your gashmias, even your physical health is dependent on your ruchnias. You have to know. God's not angry at you. He's not punishing you with this God forbid illness. It's not coming from the left side. It's God's way of hugging you. And to connect to that hug is to focus, and that's Amunah. That's why you need Moshe Rabbeinu. This was when Moshe was concerned, because to live that Amunah, he felt that if he's not going to be there, the Jewish people are not going to be able to be awakened to that feeling. The same thing applies to people who are trying to have children. So there's the three pillars of Hatzlacha we know is in Banizan, is Banei Chaim Mezayna, in Parnasa, in health, and in children. So same thing when it comes to people who are trying to have children. Sheila, these people, Shekibu Brechase Shel Rabbi, those who received the blessing of the Rabbi. The Zarachai Vekayama, for children, the Rebbe is talking either about himself or his father-in-law, the previous Rebbe. They're waiting, where's the blessing? Why have I not had children yet? The Rebbe obviously is talking to someone who's suffering from this inner battle. And already this happened. As a shayin gehalten dabei v'nifsek lepeta, and you had unfortunately a miscarriage. That's why I'm assuming that I was talking to someone specifically, at least including someone specifically. That we have to know that a person may think I'm waiting so long for children and then I have a miscarriage, right? So God's angry at me. I feel it's not even a temporary techia pushing us, and not a temporary anger of God. You'll see how this itself is going to be a salvation. Time will come. You'll see actually. How? That's how you have to have a munah. You have to subscribe and know that you're going to be able to see how this is going to be a concept of God hugging us. And the Rebbe continues with this line. I'm just going to try to finish off the last part of the Sicho. The Rebbe says like this: we're talking about spiritual connection. The Rebbe goes back to the beginning of the Sicha, that Moshe reveals the essence of the soul, which is the Rebbe. The Rebbe reveals the essence of the soul in every person. So too, not just in our spiritual connection to Hashem, but also when it comes to material things. This is what we said before, that the essence, either you're alive or not alive. It's not about how strong you are. A stronger person is just as alive as the weak person, and vice versa. The difference between someone strong and weak is only in your external strengths, in your what's called your koichas hageluyim, your revealed strength, but not in your essence. How do you reveal the essence even for physical, material blessings? That comes from the Rebbe. If someone needs life to flow through the body, if there's a problem that there's no healthy flow of life in the physical body, unfortunately, you can have some limbs that are not functioning properly. You can go to the doctor, which is what a person should do. But the doctor can help. So when you have a problem with something, you need to fix something. You broke your arm. You need an operation because the doctor could deal with what you have and try to help you and obviously cure you. But to be alive or not alive, if you can't go to the doctor and say, God, doctor, make me alive. He can't give you life. He could help the life that you have flow properly through your body. When it comes to the question, am I going to be alive or not? Then you have to go to the Rebbe. Moshe Shebedar, the Moshe of a generation, Sheesh by Kol Etzim, the Moshe. The every Moshe of the generation has the whole essence of Moshe, not just a little spark of Moshe. The person's lacking, whether it's spiritual essential life or even physical essential life. That comes that the Moshe can add to that. Again, this Rebbe is obviously in that Fabrengen talking either then or today to people, individuals. So therefore, if you go to the doctor and the doctor says, "Sorry, I can't help you. You only have 5 years, God forbid, to live." The doctor says, "As far as I see it, I can't help you anymore. I can't change the situation." The Rebbe says the doctor is not the boss about if you're going to live or not. He can help you how healthy you're going to be while you're alive. But if you're alive or not, that's not coming from the doctor. The Rebbe, Moshe Rabbeinu of the generation, is able to give essential life. Just like he's able to reveal the essential of the soul, he's able to reveal the essential of your connection to your physical life. So what do we do? How do we connect ourselves to the Rebbe? That the Rebbe should make sure that we should have our life and things should be flowing properly. So the Rebbe says, "Yesh gam dibros." That's good, not just to even just talking about iskashros, talking about connection. Like it says in the Shalom Parmas of that through talking about the sacrifices, as if we did the sacrifice, the Sayim Kvaitish Ad Mishlit, and the Rebbe finished off the Fabrengen. Yaz Hashem Yisbarach, God should help. So it's Tarchalin in the Shalom Parmas of we should no longer have to talk about his kashrus, as if his kashrus is an outside thing. That we're connecting to the Rebbe after he passed away. The Rebbe Ba'atzmi, Rebbe Shlita, the Rebbe should come down in a live way. Yalichenu Likras Mashiach Tzidkenu should take us to the coming of Mashiach B'meir of Yomenu. I wish everyone thank you for joining, and a good Shabbos, everyone, and a good Chai.